So officially welcome everyone. This is our APAC Fire Session, I think number 2. And these are our amazing panelists and leaders who are going to be participating in the design leadership. And we are very happy to have you all here. Thank you again for joining us. I'm going to be soon passing the word to these guys. And thank you really so much for joining us this night. And today we are going to be talking about design leadership. Obviously, we have 2 weeks to go until the course starts. So this is one of our last fire sessions. It's been amazing hosting so many sessions and listening to why design leadership matters, how we can become better leaders and things like that. For those who are joining us now, please write in the chat, what kind of designer are you and in which city you are joining us from? We would love to hear. We have a very diverse group. People joining from Mexico, 5 a.m. there. People joining from Sydney, from Egypt, from Melbourne, Adelaide, Brisbane. I'm sure we will have some Brazilians in the group as well. We always have. Welcome everyone and thank you for joining us. So for those who don't know me, hello, I am Juliana Proserpio. I am one of the co-founders of ECOS and also Chief Design Officer. I'm also one of the program coordinators for the design leadership. And I am very happy to be hosting this session together with Dan. I'm just giving him emotional support because he's going to be leading the whole session here. So I'm just going to pass the word and let you introduce yourself, Dan.
I come off of mute. I didn't want to like cough or anything and interrupt your lovely intro. So my name's Dan Levy. I'm principal and founder of More Space for Light. More Space for Light is a corporate innovation and strategy consultancy. So basically we unlock constraints related to strategy, whether this is definition, alignment, prioritization or validation. Our design-led approach to solving business problems doesn't help with my dongle that just fell off and smashed on the floor. We will help businesses in relation to strategy, process, product and service. We're mainly known for our transformation programs, which include design sprints. Thank you, Juliana.
Thank you, Dan. So Dan is a big partner of the program with More Space for Light as well. He's helping us spread the word. He's an ambassador. He's also a regional leader for APAC. So thank you again, Dan, Aki, the whole team for joining us in this program. And if you don't know us from ECOS, ECOS is this innovation lab driven by design. We have 3 business units inside ECOS. We have ECOS School of Design Thinking, where he hosts courses like this one, the design leadership, that is going to be starting in July 12. We also have courses that are a bit more basic for the ones who are started, design thinking, service design, business design, design futures, facilitation design, UX strategy, product design and things like that. And our most advanced course is the design leadership. We also have ECOS Innovation Projects and the ECOS Ventures. The ECOS Innovation Projects, we help businesses create value and innovate for good. We work with companies such as Google, Honda, Natura. Now we're working together with the New South Wales government and different organizations, helping them to become more innovative, creating product services and design better futures. The School of Design Thinking obviously is a school to help people and organizations master the innovation mindset in skills and tools. And we are located in different places. We started back in Brazil. That's where my accent comes from. Now I'm based in Sydney, Australia, but we used to have offices in these locations. Now we have people located in different places, not only in Brazil, Portugal, and Australia, but in different places as well. But we are a big network of innovators and designers. And our impact since 2011, we already had more than 40,000 people doing our courses. We had more than 150 projects developed. And this is a little bit of our tracking record. And we are proudly part of the Global Design Thinking Alliance. We are together with all of these institutions around the world, and we are very proud to be part of this research on design thinking. We are the only ones who are not a university, and we are practitioners and working together with these universities, developing the field of design, innovation, and design thinking, obviously. And if you, we're going to be talking about design leadership. This course is going to be starting July 12th. And it's a course developed to improve your design leadership, learning from top global and regional leaders who are going to be our panelists here today. It's a 12-week program. You can see here what kind of topics we're going to be covering in the course. What is design leadership, how to give feedback and listen deeply, how to design digital products, how to articulate the value of design, the future of service design, creating a future vision, designing for impact, setting up a design practice, extracting creativity, maintaining your team to the last miles of design, shaping organizations through design ops and paths for design leadership. In each week, we're going to have a global masterclass with all of these amazing global masterclasses that you can see here. They are all design leaders, very well renowned, and also regional workshops. So in each region, we're going to have 3 tracks. Each region, we're going to have a design leader coming and giving a workshop. So for the global masterclass, it's going to be an inspiring talk from 90 minutes where the whole globe come together and watch these amazing, inspiring leaders that can ask questions. It's going to be very interactive. This is going to be happening every Monday. And then on Wednesdays, we always have the regional tracks where you're going to be having workshops so you can be more hands-on and learn from your local leaders. And these people that we have here, they are all our local leaders from the APAC and EMEA track. So these are all the leaders that you're going to be seeing, and some of the panelists of our track are here. So thank you again for joining us. I'm going to give the word next to you. We also have the Americas track, and we also have the Brazilian track that is in Portuguese. It's not here because maybe no one will understand anything. The Brazilian track will be the only one that will be in Portuguese. And the course starts on July 12th and goes up to September 29th. And it's an exclusive course for design and innovation leaders, basically. So, this is the Brazilian track that it's a different. So then with that, I think I'm going to stop talking. I'm just going to do an introduction on design leadership. I think I really like this quote from Bruce Mao, defining a little bit what is design leadership. And he says that to lead is to envision the future and then systemically work to realize the vision. And he says, look, this is exactly what designers at their best do, and they are doing every day. So leadership and design are both processes of social influence that aim to manifest a vision of what is possible. So obviously today we're going to be discussing design leadership with all of these leaders. And I'll pass the word now to Dan to introduce everyone and to officially start the session.
Awesome. Thank you, Juliana. So I thought before we got into their questions, I'd just go around the room to each of the speakers and allow them to just give us 3 minutes of an overview of who they are, where they're at, and a little bit about their experience. So I'm going to throw over to Alessandro first up, just to say good day, introduce yourself just quickly, say where you're at and what you do and your superpower.
Thank you, Dan. Hi, everyone, and thank you for coming and listening to us. My background is Amit Hardin, and I'm living in Australia for the last 12 years. I'm doing design for 21 years now, and I call myself first a father, then a surfer, and somehow a designer. Been working with now with Westpac, before with Macquarie Bank. I work with Deloitte, and then Orbitz, that is called Expedia. And previous to that, I was living in China for many years doing R&D, so research and development of high technology. Basically, my journey started from being a visual designer 20 years ago and exploring how design solves problems many in media. I think I had this realization that the design for me was never enough, like was always like sharing opinion with different things. But the more I go to it, I get really passionate about behavioral science, and that kind of shaped my path into UX and how we deal with actually technology. So I'm in between trying to get the meaning of technology, how the people use it, and the psychology of it. And that kind of gives me the way of where I am, but also I'm a learner. I think I love learning, I love reading, and what get me through what I do as a passion, but also as I challenge myself as a designer, I kind of learned that what I do best is observing people and trying to solve problems. So in a nutshell is who I am and where I come from.
Also, Alessandro, I picked up, I'm in between. I think that's a lot of us. I'm in between, like you're like in between a lot of different things. It sounds like you wear many hats. How about yourself, Matt? Let's go
Hi,
to
everybody.
Matt. How about you? Could you?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, thanks for joining everyone. It's exciting to kind of just chat in front of a bunch of people. Great to have an informal session here. So I'm Matt. I'm a design lead at Google in Tokyo here. I kind of came up through the agency world in my early career as a visual designer as well, similar to Alessio. I did a lot of Alessandro. I did a lot of motion design. Tried to sell that in the agency world. It was a bit too early at the time, so I ended up kind of painting myself into the visual design corner. And I strictly, for the longest time, really only wanted to stay in the kind of aesthetic realm of design. And the closer and closer I butted up against UX and kind of product design, the more I fell in love with problem solving that comes with kind of understanding where a person's needs are and where their behaviors and expectations are, and trying to meet that with the creative expression that I was trying to make resonant for them. So I think through my career, both in the agency world and at Google, I found, I guess, a good match between kind of the creative and aesthetic kind of passion that led me into design and the kind of complex problem solving that is tech and software and user needs. So at Google, I've been recently in the payments world. Before I was working on in a space called the Next Billion Users, which is quite exciting, a bunch of little kind of startups within the company, working for kind of lesser markets with less attention from folks at Google, I guess. And I had experience working across Android and a bunch of other products at Google. So it's been quite a ride. Outside of design, I definitely identify as a master of none, but I collect hobbies and just I'm a kind of lifelong learner. So I'll constantly pick things up, get about mediocre at them, get bored of them, and then move on. But of late, it's been cycling and surfing and just enjoying what Japan has to offer. I've been here only 2 years, and a whole year of it's been kind of locked down. So I'm excited to see
in a small apartment, yeah, Matt. In a small apartment.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, wicked, like a pickle jar.
My 11-month-old daughter occupies one room, my wife's in the other, and then I've got what's left to kind of be in the corner here. So
the glamorous life. Awesome, thanks, Matt. And finally, Peyush, where are you? Introduce yourself. Come off mute. Say good day.
Hey everyone, this is Peyush. Those are such great introductions, and I was just thinking, it seems that all of us are, like Dan said, in between and doing many different things all at the same time. And I imagine that probably is true for a lot of, or maybe all of our attendees today. We are all doing one thing and we are trying to do many other things with it. So my background a little bit is also hopping across the railway lines, right? So you hop from one to the other. So I'm a trained architect. So I trained for building architecture from a bachelor's, and I was super interested in energy conscious design at a time when really in the US gas was cheaper than bottled water. So really sort of a wrong time to be talking sustainability. But anyway, I did that. I discovered the internet and I sort of fell in love with it because of its immediacy. And you design something here and half the world over, somebody can see it exactly as you envisioned. And of course, in those days, it was much simpler than it is today. 5 or 10 HTML tags, and that would get you going. We have come pretty far from there, I would say. So, I discovered that. And I loved the idea that I could see results right away. I realized that architecture takes time. Somebody has to live in a building that you design for 5 years before one day it'll hit them that the way sunlight washes a wall was actually not by accident, but by design. It makes you feel great, but you'll only realize it after many years of many cycles, right? And then I really liked the international nature of digital work, and I sort of fell into that. Also, I because of training in architecture, I thought always of systems and how the urban environment to a building to to inside and outside that relationship. That idea of relationship, when you design, has stayed with me all this while. So while over time I fell into designing business applications at Oracle and JD Edwards and CRM software and software for law enforcement and permission marketing and cancer research and all of these things. When I been working in India for a while, this was back in the US. In India for a while, I've worked at Goldman Sachs and Target and worked in their operations and trying to solve using design thinking methods. I can tell you in some of those organizations, people look at you or used to look at you really strangely when you mentioned the process. We got to
I was going to ask you, because you've given me a good segue. Can I launch into a segue? Is that possible? Because I've got 50 minutes left. Well, how long have I got left? I've got 40 minutes left, chaps, and we're going to be and Juliana, and so we're going to be kind of tight with our 10 minutes per question ish. And I'm going to jump straight over to you, Peyush. Juliana, if you could flick the slide to the first question. And I'm also going to invite everybody on here to add anything that you want to add, or add any questions to any of our speakers as we keep going this evening. So Peyush, as you were talking there, I was just like, that rings true. That rings so true for this first question. Based on that design thinking, and I know because that's my world and our world, and I know it's Juliana's world, and I'm sure Matt and Alessandro share some of that pie as well. What is design leadership to you, and why does that matter? And guys, I'll pass the mic around shortly. How would you respond to that?
All right, so I'll go. So design leadership. Well, I'll say it's a little bit of a matter of your maturity also. What used to mean design leadership to me earlier has changed forms over time. Now it means much closer to what Mao's definition was, because you are creative, you're creating something, or you're fixing things that are not working well, or you're creating something new. There's a component of leadership inherent in it. So whether you're doing visual design, this is your second year as a designer in life, whether you're just you're working on a flow, whether you're doing visual design, you're designing a design system. This design leadership, in my mind, is inherent in all of those things, because you're making independent decisions at a micro level, sometimes at a macro level, on the basis of what you know and what you believe is right to do, and it's right for others. And then you engage everybody in dialogue. But it's interesting that as craftspeople, a lot of us were craftspeople and are still doing craft. When you're exercising your personal skill, it translates into impact for others, and that's where it becomes an act of leadership. And so it really does matter, because leadership matters to others as it impacts them.
That's awesome, Peyush. Alessandro, do you have anything to add to that? Peyush has given us a very kind of functional response in regards to the decisions you make in the application of the craft. How about yourself?
Yeah, for me, I think this question is obviously huge, but I guess the first design is Mother Nature, right? So everything is designed. Everything we live, we touch is designed somehow. And what we see now is that technology enables us to create or to shape things in a different way where we were 50 years ago. And now design is not only a partnership with business. Design needs to shape and to lead what we do, because we have a bigger responsibility. And I think leadership now, it matters more than before, just because the complexity of the environment, the number of data sources that we have, you need to be quite specialized. And the specialization, it doesn't come from improvisation, You need to be quite educated and informed. And that's why design leadership matter more than ever.
That's awesome. And Matt, I'm going round in a circle here. Open the lid, Matt. You're at Google. And in Japan, so there's some crazy culture combinations going on there. And I know everyone will be as curious as I am. What does design leadership mean at Google in Japan?
I would actually I'm going to throw in a third kind of discipline in here to add to this Venn diagram, which is if you look at kind of the creative arts in general, right? I think one of the things that every artist or every creator or craftsman, as Peyush put it, has to kind of learn at some point is the conveyance, right? It is your influence. You create a passion space, which in our world is more of a problem space. At some point, you kind of have to have a solution in that space, and maybe for an artist, that's their inspiration and that's their work and their craft. But as you move forward, you need a way to influence the people that you're trying to reach and communicate. And I think any design needs that kind of not craft, but expertise, right? The way to influence, the way to tell that story, the way to compel, the way to bring people into your ideas and to convince them that that's the way forward. I think you build that up as you're, working through the junior levels of your career and just taking on more types of projects and solving more types of problems. Eventually you do that enough that you become effective at influencing enough that you just are put in a leadership position. Now, this doesn't happen at every company or every place. A lot of time you have to kind of forge your own path into that leadership position. But I think there's such a big intersection between what it takes to be an effective designer and actually deliver something that compels and that influences, and what it takes to be an effective leader. And now, not every leader is kind of also the source of that solution or the person who solves the problem. I think that's what's interesting is you can be a fantastic and incredibly sharp designer who can solve that problem. And not everyone has the skills and can build the skills to then take them to the person to deliver it to the masses or deliver it to the team that's going to deliver it to the masses. So I think that's what's a really interesting intersection. And I love that that's kind of part of what Echo's philosophy is kind of extending and building the tools around a design for people to lead and to get into positions of influence with their work.
That sounds to me like you're talking about communication, the ability to communicate effectively, because that simplicity through communication is a great enabler. Would that be right, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, both communication, but also just creating something that compels on its own, right? They're certainly wrapping around your design and kind of the output of your solution, the story that delivers it to someone effectively, right? They hear the problem, they know that this is the right way to go, et cetera. But I think on the other part of it, there's simply just creating something that affects and impacts other people, right? And I think, at least from my perspective and the places I've been and noticed kind of leadership, and leadership is certainly never a position or a status or anything I've chased, but I've noticed it kind of follow me because I've focused on becoming an effective influencer through my artifacts and through my work. And so as that influences, there's just a reciprocation of people kind of following or listening. And eventually, I guess you could form that into a definition of leadership, right?
That's awesome. And Juliana, I'm going to just ask you, because you're here, and I'm sure many people would be interested to know from your perspective and listening to the different lenses we've had quite very high level from Alessandro to very functional level from Peyush, and then Matt's given us a different perspective again. How about yourself, like especially in relation to this program that we're doing and bringing all these people together?
Look, I have been lucky to be listening to this answer from many design leaders of our program, so I have quite a diverse perspective. I think what I'm going to be adding on is about why design leadership matters now. And I think there are two things that are very important. I think the first thing is basically because, as Peter Merholz said in one of our sessions, every company, every organization nowadays is also a tech company. So it means that we are always designing experiences, interactions, and we're designing software, we're designing human to machine interactions, human to human interaction, all of these things. And who are the ones who are going to be designing these solutions? Usually the most equipped kind of person, and the qualities are designers. And because every company and every business and every organization became a tech company, and these companies are growing and everything is changing and really going through this digital, let's say, experience, especially now during the pandemic, all of these teams, they are growing. Many of these teams are either growing or they are facing severe competition and they are actually going to the opposite direction. So if you are someone, maybe you were someone, I don't know, 4 months ago, your team, maybe it was a team of 5 people. Now it might be a team that is going to be 30 people that is going to be under you. Maybe you were a design lead 2 months ago. Soon you're going to be becoming a design manager. Or maybe you're already an executive design director, a VP of design. but you need to prove the next steps of your leadership, of what's going to be happening in your area, how you're going to be growing your team or scaling or creating even more impact for the business, for the organization. So why it matters now. I think this is very timely that we are discussing design leadership and kind of trying to shape design leaders out there. Basically, because before that, we didn't have that many, we didn't have enough need maybe, or the teams were maybe smaller. We were not really intentionally thinking about it, but now it became really clear that we need design leaders for all of these reasons that the other panelists shared. So I think it's very timely nowadays, that it's very needed. We also, as designers, as innovators, we cannot miss this opportunity that we have now, that we have been given the place that we can prove the value of design and the impact of design. And if we don't deliver value, impact, results, and we don't bring leadership to really deliver these things, we're going to miss the opportunity, and then we're going to become a fad. I think that's one of the things that we don't want to get there, right? We want to try to do the opposite of that.
I'm going to just pick up on that. I'm really interested just to dive a bit deeper, and also I'm really mindful of the fact that everyone's only had one opportunity to respond to that question, and we'll kind of blend into the next one. Alessandro, I'm going to pick on you, and in regards to this whole kind of persona or avatar of a design leader, you've got you come in from a financial world, like from Westpac and all that. What does design leadership mean in that world? What does it mean to be a design leader?
Look, I think it's just obviously Westpac and obviously financial institution, they were pushed to change. We did before Westpac, we did an interview with probably 40 CEO of every bank in the world, and there was like this mandate to change in 3 years. So somehow bank, they were the most exposed to change, or just they're gonna go to an extinction level. So that's why I joined a bank or financial institution. But the second step was actually seeing that the large organization like that have different level of maturity, of design maturity. And that is where you actually need to be kind of very confident of where you are and what the gaps are to drive some changes. Because financial institutions are very regulated environments. And therefore change and design, they play a big part, but also they have to be quite conscious of what the recommendation is. So it's a very fine line to lead change by design, and also the leadership in design in an institution like that. There are multiple places where actually we can make making an impact, right? But somehow this conservative approach for every change, every mistake you can make in a financial institution can last for 30 years. So design and the advice that you have should be quite thorough. And therefore, we need to change how we understand design and how we depict the problem, how we analyze the problem, and how we measure that change. Some of the things that we have the luxury now is having multiple metrics, right? So we have analytics, we have qualitative, we have research, and we can drive those change. But financial institutions are very aggressive in changing the system and also the relationship with the customer. So user experience is the top of the priority. But how we do that design change is through small incremental things, because we can't talk about innovation in a bank or in a large institution. Innovation goes to a startup. We do incremental improvement, which are very
yes. So it sounds like you're going very Six Sigma-y on us. So it's all about efficiencies in innovation. That's what I'm picking up.
Yeah, it's hard. There's this illusion you go and change, and there's a lot of innovation there, but is a very engineered balance between what can be done and how we do it without disrupting the industry. So like obviously the luxury of a startup is quite different, but somehow you need a very solid design team that evangelize to different level or to communicate with different level of maturity.
Oh,
That's the reason we call them institutions, right? Sorry.
Correct, Matt.
I was going to ask you about 1 billion users and how that applies, but I want to go over to Peyush because I'm just wondering, like, in terms of whereabouts in India are you, Peyush? I'm going to have to do the point at the ear thing, the international recognition. You're on mute, bud. Whereabouts are you? Whereabouts in India are you?
Bangalore.
Bangalore. And in terms of maturity and design leadership, what's the perception of that field of the domain over there?
I think in Bangalore we're doing pretty good. I would say that first of all, we have a lot of startups and a lot of non-startups who have set up really large tech offices here. So and then you have in-house design teams, and then you have a whole bunch of consulting design firms that work with them. Design.it, the one where I manage the ASEAN office out of here, Bangalore, we work with clients all around, and we see that the clients are looking for mature design-led organizations to help them figure out how to find the right meaning of design for them. Because remember earlier I said it started as an architect, it was a product design space, right? You design one at a time. Now the impact of design and designers is that you design at scale. You design one place and it impacts so much more. That's what I see clients looking for, and particularly in Bangalore, it's a much more mature ecosystem of design leadership skills, and what organizations get out of in-house or consulting organizations.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to go down to Matt, and I'm going to just change the question a little bit because we've been quite focused from an outward and external and impact outwards. I'd be really interested to look back inwards in regards to scaling within the organization, because I know there'll be designers on the line here that will be like, well, what's my future? Where am I going? How do I add impact? And Matt, especially through your world and your next billion users, I'd be interested to know how Google's equipping you guys and how you're equipping your team to be ready for that.
Sure. I mean, Google's a big place. It's different team by team. There's sizes and scales different. Even within payments itself, I used to work in Singapore, and I actually had quite a big team under me, and got to go from a small set to quite a large set. And then moving here, I'm back to, I only manage 2 people, and I'm going to be scaling moving ahead. So I'm used to fluidly going between different scales. I think one of the interesting things, or at least at Google, one of the things they're equipping with us is, of course, training and access to other leaders. It's a big company, lots of people to talk to. But I think one of the interesting things about scaling is you realize, especially as you fluidly move between, okay, you have a huge structure under you, or you have a small set, is time management and kind of your priorities are the biggest things that you need to keep consistent, if you will, right? Whether you have a massive team or a small team, you still have to manage your time effectively. The massive team can easily draw all of your time by just making sure your people are happy and that you guys are going the right direction. A small team can easily draw your time by being overwhelmed with meetings and people who need UX but don't have enough people to kind of have spread around, right? So I think that's the biggest thing I've kind of learned at having fluidly moved between these scales. The other is priorities, right? At any scale, regardless of how many resources or folks that you're kind of bringing along your journey with you, you are here to represent your users. You are here to represent how the product is meeting your consumer at the end of the day. Not many of your other cross-functional partners are actually thinking about that bottom line. And so being at all the right meetings and kind of marching your priorities all around that is kind of key. And it's easy to lose sight of that when you're either swamped with too much management or you're swamped with too many meetings. And I think that's an issue at either end of the scale. Yeah,
that's awesome. I was just checking I wasn't on mute, because I
Okay.
would have been a massive hypocrite there. I'm meant to be keeping tabs. Juliana, I'm going to go over to you as well, because you've come over. You bought Echoes over almost 8 years ago now. 8 years ago you guys were in South America. Now you've come over to Australia, and you've had to start from scratch in a new market. What are some of the criteria you found in regard to scaling a design team?
Thank you, Dan. 10 years now. We started back in 2011, and then because we had like different parts of the business. We opened the school 8 years ago, but we started 10 years ago. Look, I think it's a great question, because we were a big, not big, but for us, we were a big team back in Brazil. We had like 40 people working in our team. And then when we came and opened the business in Australia, it was just me and Ricardo, basically the other co-founder of Echoes. And it does make you think like a startup again. I think what we were doing in Brazil at the time before we moved here, we were creating the infrastructure, creating the hierarchies, creating the management team, fostering this kind of the design ops and the design systems and all of these things. When we arrived back in Australia, we were a startup again. And I mean, we are entrepreneurs at the same time. We are design leaders, but also entrepreneurs. In one way, it gave us so much freedom. It was so good in one way, because we could start things like, again, from scratch, prototype quickly, test things. Because when you have a bigger team, like Alessandro was saying, you have to be much more regimented. You cannot change things every day and let's start again and let's redo everything. And honestly, for our, I think, personality, we're more used to being a startup. And me as a leader, I'm more used to being a startup. And I'm learning as well as I go to be more regimented and to create this. I think basically what we are learning and becoming big again and having bigger teams is to kind of create this creative rigor, right? Because you need to maintain creativity, but you need to have rigor. You need to have discipline, and you need to create something that everyone can understand, everyone can move along. And I think one of the things that changed 10 years ago from now is that 10 years ago, design was much more generalist. So design was a bigger pack, right? And I think now within the design practice, everything is a bit more specialized. So we have the different particularities and the different strengths and the different abilities within design and technology. Before, everyone kind of did everything. And you had to have, I mean, nowadays we sometimes try to hire unicorn designers, but that's often very rare. And we need to create these teams, right? That we have this ability to come together and we have the different abilities within the team. So these changed a lot in the past 10 years. And also the other thing that I think changed a lot within scaling teams is that design is being more and more valued. So even the salaries are grew a lot. We have now a competition for salaries. For a smaller teams nowadays, it's hard to compete with bigger organizations. And the bigger organizations are pushing the salary, which is great for designers. But how do you maintain and attract your teams and maintain your team and grow your team and all of these things? These are challenges that we are always facing, and all designers, leaders are facing nowadays.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. How do you sell them the dream, the vision? I just in the chat, and I'm going to go around the room. I'm going to go to you in a moment, Peyush, to add on the end of that. But I'd just be interested to know, riffing off of what Juliana said, everybody here, if you could let us know in the chat whether you see yourself more as a generalist or a specialist. I'd be interested. And Peyush, I'm going to go over you. Maybe you could share first and then go on in regards to add on to scaling teams, finding talent from your perspective.
Sure. So, well, while you ask that question, generalist or specialist, I think I started as a specialist of one kind, and now in some ways I'm generalist, but I'm a specialist of being a generalist, let's say. So
that's not fair. You can't. Is any generalist of being a specialist? Have we got any of the opposite? Anyone flip-flop the other way?
Yeah. So, I guess what I mean to say is, when you start out as a designer, you're valued for your core skill, whatever that core skill is. You're great at doing digital design or service design or what have you. And then as you grow into your career and as you find more things that you can influence, over time, your core skill with what you begin to take less and less time of the week. And you're doing many other things. And then lo and behold, 20 years later, you're doing everything is in the realm of design, right? Influencing is the realm of design. Business evaluations are part of design now. Everything is part of that. So that's how I would say that it sort of, I wouldn't recognize that original skill as my core skill anymore, but there's so many more skills together that I quote unquote specialize in. So anyway, that's that, Dan. So now talking about, so I'll just leave it at that. There's no more clarity I think I have on
we don't need to continue this conversation, Peyush. It sounds like you added a big fat full stop on the end of it for everyone.
Well, so you were talking about scaling teams, and actually what Juliana had also mentioned. One thing I'll say that actually what Matt said resonated so much with me. When you have a small team, you have different sets of things that are pulling on their time and consequently yours, and you have a larger team, it's a different kind of a game. In our case, like right now at Design It, I started the studio here about 5 years ago, 6 years ago now. It sounds so long ago now. But, I was like employee number one and you got to pull the next one. And I think Juliana and others will recognize how difficult it is in the beginning to bring enough high quality people within your orbit so that together you can start doing something, right? A 2-people team, 5-people team, our parent company, Wipro, that acquired Design It at that time was 180,000 people. So, a 5-people team in Bangalore means nothing to them. So how do we get to a point where we are having a meaningful dialogue? So a lot of it was brand building in the employee population, while we are also trying to do brand building in the client population. And at the same time, you got to keep positioning the dream that you have that others can resonate with, and those are the ones that you want on your team. So in a way, it was, apart from this client and business context, it was, it was creation of a value that we want to articulate, a value proposition to prospective employees, which goes beyond salary. Because as Juliana noted, salaries have gone through the roof and we can't always compete on salary. Can we compete a little bit on the dream? Can we provide the right work environment, the right colleagues, the right projects, to get high quality people to come in the door? But now we are like 45 people, 30 to 45, and this is still small, but pretty large from a design organization point of view. And we are talking Design It, which is 800 plus people globally. So we are still small, even within this, not to mention, the larger parent. But it's quite a flex between small and large teams and what you got to do at that time.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, 35 people. That's quite small. That's insane. That's amazing. That's amazing. Alessandro, let us know. Specialist, generalist?
Seconding Juliana, I think for what I actually now have a problem with is finding the right resources. We are looking for many roles like product designer, content designer, visual designer, and there's so much request out there that it's really hard to find someone that has a bit of skill, but also the attitude. So my thinking is obviously specialist, like he's been specialization is kind of the right way to do it, because the complexity of technology required that kind of specialization. And obviously there are the T-shape, classic T-shape specialization that a lot of people misunderstand, right? Like you have T-shape that go really, really broad. It's a T for a reason, right? You have very, very good vertical, and then you may go around a bit at the edges, but specialization is what we need, and therefore design makes sense in a larger organization. And scaling team is quite complicated. Just from a behavioral perspective, we as a human we always have this land and conquer, right? We land expand. We think that a lot of people make a lot of difference, but it has to be quite methodical, and you need a bit of training as well. Just what we need, and I second Matt would say is like one of the biggest probably skill is like humility. You know, just I love that, Matt. I think that is like, and I think design has these things that is really important, but actually is a supportive function to business. And that defines the humility of design. So we can't go there and become a big team and scale pretending to influence things. I think we need to demonstrate that we influence business with outcomes, and those outcomes have to be valuable. So I think when you reach that point, you can scale up team, but also with a rule of thumb that is actually you can't stretch design more than 30%, because then design becomes the bottleneck of what you're trying to achieve, and it's almost a failure itself. So the idea is that specialized, but also scaling a team is has to be quite mindful, something that you build over time, but also you create value through outcomes.
That's awesome. I've just got to say, as somebody who hires teams and scales teams, the tension for me, Matt, I'll come to you in a moment, but the tension for me is as a leader, you start forgetting about design and you just try and think about the people that you want on your team. And something for me that we've started focusing on is in terms of value systems, like ability. You know, you see a CV, you see a resume, resumes don't really tell you the whole story. I'm sure, you know, like as you bring in bigger teams and that, like you spend a day with some people, it doesn't vibe. It's all about the vibe. And for me, I don't know, you guys have already heard of a chap called Patrick Lencioni. I think that's his name. I think I've butchered it. He has a great book called The Ideal Team Player, and he talks about 3 different values: humility, hungry, showing humility, being hungry, and being smart. Humility as in being able to see mistakes, being aware of the team, being smart as in people smart, and being hungry not for themselves but for the team, for the success of the team. And some of the things I hear you guys speak about this evening, you know, really kind of tick those boxes. But the tension is you focus so much on the person, sometimes you forget about the ability as well. So that's, as a design leader, you're always like kind of competing between the two. Thank you, Kim. Thank you. Hopefully I did justice on the surname. Matt, I'm going to go over to you. I'm going to end with you. I saw you're a specialist. What are you a specialist in? And tell us about, you know, respond on what some of the guys have been speaking about this evening.
Yeah, of course. So my specialist career-wise, or at least in the creative field's always been motion graphics. That's kind of where I started. It's what still excites me. It's still valuable in this industry and in many of the creative industries. In fact, to me, I got into design because I naturally needed to create. I would find myself, regardless of whatever job I had, at the end of the day, if I wasn't creating something or just naturally producing something that was kind of my own volition and expression, I wasn't happy. And I've made it a point through every role I've had, through any team I've had, that my manager or any structure around me understands that I need a certain % of my bandwidth set aside so I can continue that specialization. So I still animate, I still reserve about 15 to 20% of my time to be IC, still doing that kind of work because it's important to me. And I think half of it is understanding in this profession. And I think Alessandro put it really well. You know, over the long term, the industry changes so much. It's software, right? Everything. If you want to keep up with the tools, if you want to be a generalist and keep up with every practice, that's a lot of work. That's a full-time job in itself. And you're going to find yourself continually going through, you know, self-education and tutorials and just stuck into many rabbit holes. And I don't have time for that. But I think, you know, finding something that actually gets you up in the morning and continuing kind of to pursue that in whatever means, whether it's learning a new tool in that direction or it's just understanding how some other industry sees this form of art, I think has been really important for me. On the other side of it, I grew up kind of in love with science and scientists and the notion behind it. And of course, you know, the famous scientists and anybody notable in that career spends, you know, decades and decades and decades of deep thought around a single problem space before they forge a path that helps all of humanity, right? So I'm generally inspired by that notion that if we really want to have that impact and influence, we really, really have to kind of narrow our thinking into some ways towards something direction. And I'm not going to say motion design is going to have dramatic impact on net positive humanity, but for me, it's an important part that balances kind of how I'm spending my day in meetings or hiring and doing all these other things. If I'm doing something that is generally aligned with kind of that specialization, I'm happy. I know that at the end of the day, I'm always bringing that value to my team because I am one of the few people on my team who has that specialization, and I think that's important. Now, externally, when you're hiring or when you're looking at other folks, I'm glad you brought up hungry and that philosophy. I think that's one of the biggest things I focus on is that person's appetite for a space, whether it's a space of interest or it's a narrow space of craft within the design field. If they have a sufficient enough appetite, and I can slowly form my team or my mission or the vision of our product around a menu that delivers a buffet of that appetite, then we're in a good place, right? I've met them at a place where they can kind of put 120% of all their passions, all their efforts, all their energy into something great that helps the team, helps the product. And if you've got a whole team who are kind of at this buffet all day, you're in a good place as a leader. You like I said, you can step back and let them take all the credit because they're doing the good work. You know?
Lining up those cannons, but I think the hungry point is really important as well, because you want people that are proactive, and I think around that whole term of curiosity. So it's not just about hungry for success, but hungry for knowledge. And also going down to the specialist, what I'm picking up from you, Matt, is having a point of view in that specialization both helps your brand and helps you actually add more value, because you have that specific place you come from as an anchor, and then everything coming back to Alessandro from a tea, but not like a tea that goes on forever with a really short stubby base, but it allows you to kind of absorb other things that are relevant, that add value or add a bit more equity to your point of view. That's so cool, guys. Look, I've got 3 minutes left. Juliana's been super patient, sitting there biting all her nails. We've got, I just posted in the chat if we got any questions. So there is a question, and these are my favorite questions. Guys, if you could recommend, I'm going to hand over to Juliana afterwards to close us out and share the amazing discount for the program. Are there any of your favorite books? What are you reading right now? What if you could recommend one book to everybody, what would it be?
I can show what I'm reading now.
Go for it.
Adam Grant is organizational psychologist, and just the way of thinking again. And it's really relevant to what I do and how I do it, and probably how we do design. It's basically circle design if we want to see it at an angle, but it's deeper than that. Quite nice if you want to read it. It's not per se by design. Yeah.
That's awesome. Think again. How about you, Peyush? Anything you're reading right now you could recommend? I love you. Are you actually reading whilst you're on the call, everyone? You got your books in front of you. What we got there? Emotional Design. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Classic.
Emotional Design by Don Norman. So
you just pulled that out to show off, didn't you?
No. This came out a few years ago, and this is sort of an update. This is sort of an update on his seminal book, where he was all about functionality and, doors don't open and latches and this. And I mean, that was just, if that gets you started as designer, you have a good career ahead. I mean, you can never forget that, right? But then here he went all the way around and he said there are objects that are worthy just because they hit an emotional chord in you. And I think that's an important thing to remember, because a lot of the design can turn into very functional work. It is necessary. Functionality is necessary, but there's a space for delight as humans, right? And not everything can just be purely efficiency at any level. And I think design is one of those rare professions that sits at the crossroads of art and science. So if we don't bring that unexpected delight to a very functional space, who else will, right? Where else will this happen? So I think, that's not what he's saying necessarily. He's talking about how emotionally you get, you respond to things emotionally, not just rationally. But my takeaway from all of that, and that's my intent to do, is where can we provide delight in a very functional, money first space, right? how can we be efficient and delightful at the same time?
I love that, delight. That's brilliant. And Yasa added a book in the chat, The Architect's Brain, Neuroscience, Creativity and Architecture by Harry Francis Mulgrave. So there's another book there as well, just to kind of platform off of you there, Peyush. Thank you. Matt, how about yourself? What are you reading right now?
So firstly, I'm not in reach of any of the books that are on top of mine.
You just bang the wall and it'll come down on you.
Exactly. I've just actually started The Culture Map. It's been recommended to me. I should have read it years ago, having kind of moved from California to Singapore and now Tokyo, and obviously working in tons of different cultures. It's been good so far, but I've just started it. Honestly, it may be obvious by how I've answered some of these questions, but as someone who's still trying to do some IC work, as someone who's kind of come into leadership by proxy of just career and doing this for a while, I actually do most of my reading outside the design sphere. I get inspired by, like I said, reading about scientists or reading about the processes of like physics and mechanics and things. It actually helps me bring back some practices, some kind of concepts back into motion design, or even what I do as a leader, just thinking about teams and people and structures. So I'm excited by what I see in the Culture Map. Obviously, it's popular now. Folks have probably heard of it, read it. I'm a bit behind, but excited about it. From a design impact standpoint, though, I'm going to date myself a bit, but the classic Cradle to Cradle was one of the biggest influencers on my design career. And it sounds weird as someone who works in software and tech on mobile, mobile and web products, but just the philosophy of understanding the impact and the decision making and really thinking long term about every single thing you're putting in place. Especially if you grok the concept in the physical world as the author did at the time, and you try to bring that into the world of software and to tech, it just transforms how you think. And I think it does set you apart as a leader from someone who is kind of built their career in the agile space, and they're used to just changing and ripping things up and testing everything and experimenting on everything. Those are obviously great practices, but someone who can really deeply think about decisions and understand and try to project the long-term impact. And even as a leader, you're often trying to guide your team towards principles and foundational work that's going to set your team up to scale. I think it's really important to think with that kind of mindset of how's this going to appear in the long term, what's going to happen when I leave this team, etc. It's really important.
Cradle to Cradle, that's awesome. All right, so I'll just share one I'm reading at the moment. It's called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. I think that's correct. And that is just, I'm taking too long on that book because it's like eating really rich chocolate. Like, so great quote from it. If you focus on the obstacle, that becomes your obsession. You should always focus on the goal. That's been one of my most profound statements out of that book. Juliana, I'm going to let you recommend your book and close out. So guys and everybody for joining us this evening or this morning or today, thank you so much. It's been brilliant talking to everyone. Juliana, over to you.
Thank you, Dan. So I'm going to agree with Peyush, who said that he's a generalist and also a specialist. As a generalist, I'll recommend the book from Bruce Mao, 24 Principles for Designing Massive Change. His new book is really amazing. And as a specialist, we're starting a project now that is about, I cannot show it here. It's about urban design and city, basically Sydney. So I'm rereading this book called The City of Tomorrow, Sensors, Networks, Hackers, and the Future of Urban Life, which is amazing, from Carlo Hatti and Matthew Claudel. So I just wanted to say again, thank you everyone for joining us. Our course is starting really, really soon, in 2 weeks, in July 12. We are really started. From the APAC track, Peyush is going to be the first session talking about design leadership. I think Matt will be the third on digital products, and I think Alessandro will be on week 4 or 5. Now I don't remember it, but they're all going to be there. Dan is going to be together with me in the last week on week 12. So we're going to be closing up the session of the APAC and EMEA track. So if you want to join us, please do so now, because our seats are almost, we're closing the teams and the tracks. And if you want to join us, please guarantee your spot. We have 20% off a special code. So fire session number 1, design leadership. And if you have any questions, please talk directly with Luna Pigato. She is our program advisor. She's going to be happy to answer any questions. And thank you again for the panelists. It was an absolute pleasure to hear. I am leaving this session very, very satisfied. It was very high level, and not high level in terms that it was like super broad, but it was really, really, really interesting. And the conversation was up there about design leadership. Thank you so much for bringing your perspectives. I know that you all have very busy agendas. Thank you for joining. It was amazing. So Dan, whatever, up to you. Maybe we can, I don't know, wrap it up, or whoever has questions. I can stay more for sure. I don't know about the leaders. Feel free to jump off as well, to say your goodbyes and jump off, but I can surely stay a little bit longer. And thank you again.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Juliana.
Juliana.
I'd say maybe pop the books that you recommended. Where would everyone get hold of the books that you recommended?
I wrote on the chat.
Oh, in the chat.
I can
Okay.
write again. I can write again.
What was the one that you recommended before? The Future City or something, wasn't it?
The city of tomorrow. I can write it here. Carlo Ratti. It's really good, this book. I read about 5 years ago, and I'm rereading 5 or 4 years ago. I don't know. It's so good.
Really? It's getting the time to read. That's the.
I know it.
that's the
I'm just
pain.
thinking, man, I wish I could read all these books. I have a half-a-page list now.
Got these books all behind me. About 2 of them now. I've been for a few of them. It's hard. It's hard to get that time, isn't it? Oh my
Guys, I
gosh.
got to jump off, but I just want to say this is really fantastic participating in the conversation. And Dan, you're a master of running this. Alessandro, Matt, it was really great to hear. Juliana, and thank you everyone who took time out. I really jammed on this. This was really good. And I got, 5 books out of this, which is not a bad deal at all.
I was going to
Thank
have a
you.
bet if Juliana was going to say Bruce Mel. I didn't want to ruin it. I was going to say, which Bruce Mel book would you recommend, Juliana?
His last one, the 24 Principles for Massive Change.
Yeah.
I always talk about him.
I know, they're all like $400 books. I'm like,
Wow, it's good. It's good.
Thanks, Peyush.
Bye. Thank you, Peyush.
All right.
see you guys. I've got to go as well, guys, and everyone else. So thank you so much for having
Thank
me.
you,
I'll see you all
everyone.
soon. Nice to
Thank
meet you,
you.
Matt. See you,
Thank you.
Alessandro.
Likewise,
Steve.
Dan.
Bye,
Thank
Matt.
you.
Bye. Bye, Juliana. Bye, Dan.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank
everyone.
you.